Welcome back to the Snap. Michael Heaver here, alongside my co-host Patrick O'Flynn, of course. And before we get on to what could be the prospect of an early general election, Patrick, more absolutely appalling data, research, numbers for the prospects of Keir Starmer as Labour leader.
Yes, the YouGov monthly tracker on the party leaders is out, and Keir Starmer's ratings, which have been in decline since November, that really has accelerated today, and they're the most appalling ratings I can remember from a Labour Party leader. I think I'm right in saying that even Jeremy Corbyn didn't get quite this bad, and Starmer has an overall rating of minus 48. And within that, some of the subgroups are even worse. I think the average with all male voters, minus 53, the over 65s, minus 60, in the south outside London, minus 52. You don't come back as a leader of an opposition from ratings like that. The whole idea of this guy as potential election winner for Labour has just gone. And I think we'll see him unravel. I don't think he will lead Labour into the next election now.
Well, it's interesting. I mean, I looked at the figures on this as well. And when you look at lead voters, what you see is something that really shouldn't surprise you when you see this, that Labour got a drubbing in Hartlepool. He's on minus 61 with lead voters. 74%, Patrick, 74% of Brexiteers say that Keir Starmer is doing badly as Labour leader. And just to give the context of this, in June 2020, overall 21% of Brits in June 2020 said Starmer was doing badly then. It's now 2/3. It's now 65%. And oh, by the way, when it comes to Labour voters, 60% of Labour voters now say Starmer doing badly, just 24% saying well. And for me, Patrick, it really does come down surely to this Batley and Spen by-election. If the Labour Party lose that, surely he's out on his ear.
I would have thought so now, and this current electoral cycle we've just been through has just cemented in place his reputation as the ultra Remainer who tried to void the Leave vote, and he managed to cement that in place by choosing an ultra Remainer candidate in Hartlepool. It all went terribly wrong for him, and I think even more concerning for him now, the bungling of the shadow cabinet reshuffle, particularly the intended demotion of Angela Rayner, has made her massively stronger. And the Prime Minister this afternoon in the Commons, in the Queen's speech opening debate, was taunting Keir Starmer about Angela Rayner as the hungry lioness who intends to gobble him up. And given Andy Burnham's not in the Commons, I think Angela Rayner is now in an incredibly strong position as a northern working class voice. She rubs a lot of people up the wrong way, but she has a strong personality and is more likely, I think, to get a hearing among working class voters than Keir Starmer ever is.
Well, I mean, it'll be interesting to see if Labour MPs have the bottle to get rid of Starmer, if they see if Starmer and the Labour Party managed to cling on at the Batley and Spen by-election. By-election, they, of course, should win, as they should have won Hartlepool if they were anywhere near putting in a successful performance at the next general election. But, Patrick, something I want to highlight is the fact that I think it's increasingly likely now that rather than the next general election occurring in December 2024, it could be brought forward. We've seen today the dissolution calling of Parliament bill now being tabled, now being talked about. The Fixed Term Parliament Act will be repealed, meaning that Boris Johnson will have the power to call a general election. Now, I'm not saying, obviously, he's got a massive majority already. I'm not saying it will happen this year, perhaps not 2022, but as we know before, we've discussed before, in 2023, the IMF are forecasting the UK to be the fastest growing advanced economy in the entire world. You might think by then Boris could call the election, though, of course, perhaps the Labour Party will be in a completely different position with a different leader by then.
Yeah, I still think it's odds against the 2023 general election. They always were going to scrap the Fixed Term Parliaments Act. It's certainly, it's an option now, but I think whenever the next election is, it will be in the late spring or early summer. They won't do another winter general election. So we're looking at mid-2024 or perhaps the early cut mid-2023. But if the government went for that mid-2023 polling day, I think it would look a bit gimmicky in the eyes of many voters, given they have a majority of 80 plus, a lot of work to do on the levelling up agenda. Cutting short the parliament by 18 months would just seem to me a bit excessive. So I still think the most likely outcome is a general election in May or June 2024. But certainly it's a nice option for Boris Johnson to have, and it may be the sweet spot in terms of the performance of the economy.
Well, it's been great to see the views surging already, Patrick, on what is quite a new show here on the Snap. So I will remind viewers, do hit the subscribe and the bell button. That's the best way to ensure you don't miss the next show. And I think we're already proven, Patrick, that just sort of diving into the actual British public opinion rather than some silly Westminster narrative makes you much more plugged in with the public mood. And that, of course, is bared out by the election results that we saw.
Yeah, I think it hasn't been a great time the last few years for political commentators generally, has it? And, you know, if political commentators had to be judged on their record and their standard of work, you know, they'd be, if they were electricians, they'd be wiring up every plug incorrectly and blowing up houses. I mean, the number of commentators who claimed that Keir Starmer was this amazing character who got Labour back on course for power, who thought that Remain would easily win the referendum, who thought that Boris Johnson wouldn't get a majority in 2019. I mean, there's a whole group of them that get every call wrong, and they thought that the curtains row was going to transform the political agenda. They thought this last set of elections were going to be a Boris Johnson crisis. Well, to be that wrong, I mean, it makes you wonder why they are able to carry on in this part of the trade.
That's why I think the Snap is needed, Patrick, and we're already, you know, and thanks to those of you that are watching, that it's required so badly, is because in effect political punditry in this country and probably around the world for that matter, it operates like the sort of proposed European Super League, doesn't it? There's no relegation. The same people that were getting the calls 5 years ago totally wrong, got Brexit totally wrong, that got Boris Johnson totally wrong, will still be in the TV studios in the years to come making the same false predictions. Though I did note that you tweeted out or responded to a good article actually from John Rentoul in The Independent, where he talked about some of the things we're talking about, which is that effectively Labour has become a middle class party and working class voters now en masse switching to the Conservatives.
Yeah, there was a very, very interesting piece from John Rentoul, who is one of the more thoughtful commentators. And he did go through a whole load of data which showed that the lower income people had, the more likely they were, in fact, to be voting Conservative. And that's a drastic turnaround. But it's real, and it's partly related to, I think, basic respect, you know, respecting people's vote, for instance, to leave the European Union, respecting traditional culture that people have and value, and stable communities. You know, I think the Labour Party will go into the next election, presumably just promising to throw money at people with low incomes and expect them to swallow that and vote Labour, and never mind that this is a party that despises the Union flag and is ashamed of Britain's culture and heritage. Well, I don't think working class people are willing to go down that route.
Look, guys, as I said, thanks again so much for watching. Make sure you hit subscribe and the bell so you don't miss the next episode. Me and Patrick are going to keep getting it on the money, hopefully, in terms of what we're talking about in British politics. So make sure you're subscribed, and we will see you soon.
See you soon. Curtains for Keir.